Hello, good evening everybody, and welcome to this so many lecture on qigong, where we go really deep into the background and the theory of the qigong that we practice. Today, qigong number 4, and I've put my chair here because talking and standing is not good. So, qigong number 4. Yin Yang Sun Juan, the name. So, how much of a giveaway can a name be? Yin Yang Sun Juan means the revolution of yin and yang. And that is exactly what this exercise is all about. Now, at the beginning of this series of lectures, I have stated that qigong is not neidan, it is not internal alchemy. But now we have arrived at where we have to delve into just that, the world of internal alchemy. First, I'll talk a bit about this world of internal alchemy, and then I'll explain to you how this connects to the qigong that we practice. So, the world of neidan. The goal of neidan. Neidan literally means the inner cinnabar. And as a phrase, it is a reference to the dantian, the cinnabar field. It is a, if not the, form of internal alchemy, and thanks to the travelers of the Silk Road and the early alchemists in Arab countries, it has become the foundation for our own Western form of alchemy. With that in mind, it is quite safe to state that in fact, neidan is the foundation of our modern science. However, when we return to neidan, there is one question that no one ever seems to ask. What is the goal of neidan? You will not find an answer in the old texts. Different from ancient texts on Daoyin or other predecessors of qigong, where it is written how that specific exercise serves your health and gives you long life, no such expectations are given in the texts on neidan. So, if I state that in fact the goal of neidan is immortality, then that is my personal opinion. It is partly based upon the goal of Western alchemy, where the transformation of lead into gold was, or is, just a phase in the process of eventually refining the pill that gives immortality. So there we have the idea that the goal of neidan is to become immortal. The later Taoists do hardly talk about immortality. What they do talk about is returning to the original state. And in the Taoist systems of neidan, you will therefore encounter a gradual and systematic method to return to that original state step by step, with each step being defined. It is in the Taoist systems that you will encounter a breathing method that is being referred to as fetal breathing, because you won't get closer to being original than a fetus. With the early Taoists, however, we encounter a totally different perception of neidan. If we read the Tao Te Ching, for instance, then we can divide the book in two parts: the Tao Ching and the De Ching. We can rudely state that the Tao Ching part of the book teaches us qi skills. It does this not by giving precise how-to instructions to the reader, but by describing how to act in order to obtain these skills. Be like water, my friend. Or it describes the effects of having these skills. A tongue is softer than teeth, so it will live longer whilst the teeth fall out. Things like that. How to get there is up to you to figure out. The De Ching part of the Tao Te Ching is in fact an explanation to a king. It talks to this king about how to govern his country whilst following these qi skills. We can learn two things from this. The first is that qi skills are not meant for us simple folk. The second is that they can and must be put to external use, in this case to govern a country. And although there is a lot of talk about having a longer and more fluently progressing life when you follow the way of the qi skills, there is no mention of a specific goal. Then we arrive at Zhuangzi, the ultra Taoist. Now, if you'd say that Zhuangzi is just a weirdo who has enjoyed one mushroom too many, then you might, in fact, be closer to the truth than you'd think. Where LSD or LSD-like chemicals have been the great liberator of the last century and have influenced many great artists such as Dali and Sting, mushrooms were the thing to use in the old days. In Zhuangzi, one can find many stories that might make us think whether this is Zhuangzi speaking or the mushroom. I give you as an example the butterfly question. Zhuangzi puts the question forward whether he is a butterfly dreaming that he is a man, or that he is a man who dreams in his sleep of being a butterfly. Well, a nice and philosophical question as it is, this has mushroom written all over the place to me. Anyway, again, we find a lot of descriptions in the Zhuangzi of how a person behaves when endowed with qi skills or mushrooms, and completely living after these skills, but again, no mention of a specific goal. The development of Neidan. At a given moment in history, you see how Neidan practice comes together with ideas from Chinese medicine. Where in the Tao Te Ching or in the Zhuangzi, there is a reference to the Dantian. The Tao Te Ching says that the belly has to be full. There is no obviously recognizable reference to meridians. In the I Ching, a book which even predates Taoism, there is some reference to the importance of the back and Isho Dantian training. Hexagram 52, for instance, literally says to stabilize one's back, not holding on to one's body, to move in one's court, not seeing one's people. To stabilize one's back would, in our words, be phrased as to facilitate the Dumai. And to move in one's court, the Dantian, not seeing one's people, is a perfect description of high-level Isho Dantian training, because if you can sink the I in the Dantian, you will not be aware of what happens around you. Now, I said that stabilizing the back equals to facilitating the Dumai, but it is not actually being said. It is my personal deduction. And in order to prevent this from becoming an historical oversight of the development of Neidan, let's fly. Why does the thing not work? Let's fly through time, and then we arrive somewhere in the 16th, 17th century. Here we encounter, for instance, the Neijing tool. You might know that as the old drawing with the mountain as a backbone and so on. The famous picture of the inner landscape. Here we also find Neidan texts that talk about the Renmai and the Dumai. One of the very, very important things in Neidan is the connection of Yang and Yin by completing the heavenly orbit. I'll get to that later. For now, we'll have to ascertain that there is something very strange going on when we try to connect the Renmai specifically to the idea of the heavenly orbit. The qi in the Renmai has an ascending direction, but in the heavenly orbit, it is supposed to go down instead. You will find many texts, specifically from present-day authors, who try to find an explanation for this. One of the most common ideas that I have heard about this is some mumbling about the inner trajectory of the Renmai. Now, the critical point in this is that all of these people are theorists. They are much worse trained than I am, and I am not good at all. So let's forget what these very learned people have to say, as it is not experience-based. And when it's not experience-based, it suffers greatly from logical deduction. Remember logical deduction, when I drew the circle and I asked how you would continue the placing of the dots. Now you'll often hear me say, every statement is a question. The statement here is the observation that no previous Chinese author has brought this point forward, the point of the renmai flowing in a different direction than needed for the heavenly orbit. Not a single one. So what is happening here? Are all these Chinese sleepwalking idiots, whereas the genius acupuncturist from Israel or Germany is the know-it-all? Methinks not, no. Let's turn to the Bible for a second. Where in the Bible can you read about Jesus having to pee? The point is that if he did not ever have to pee, then that would be a true miracle and people would most certainly have mentioned that. But they did not. Why? Because it is an obvious fact. There is nothing special about having to pee, so you do not need to mention it in your description of the life and actions of Jesus. Now, what does Jesus pee have to do with Neidan? That if there is no mention of something, then that just means that that something is not an issue. Apparently, there is no contradiction between the direction of the heavenly orbit and the direction of the renmai. In order to understand how this can be, we have to fly to another time frame. First, we have looked at the ancient Taoists and scriptures. Then we flew to relatively modern times, and now we go to the in-between. The truth lies always in the in-between. Bao Puzi, the master who embraces simplicity, being one of the most famous of these actual Neidan practitioners. Another one is Zhang Boduan, who lived in the 11th century. So now I have thrown around the name of my friends, and let's see what they have to say. Wang Mu is a Taoist from the beginning of the previous century. And I only mention him because he has detected a system in the Neidan of the old days. This system consists of four levels. Now I'm going to keep it very short, as Neidan theory is extremely complicated. And I'm not going to talk in depth about these four levels. Partly, by the way, that is also because I am not at a level where I can understand the last two levels. So what's left are the first two levels. In the first level, the only thing that you concern yourself with is tranquility. And the goal of tranquility is to quiet the qi. When the qi is quiet, meaning that it can freely circulate without any stagnations or obstructions, then the jing will restore itself. During this first level, one of the helpful means to quiet the qi is Yisho Dantian. Yi is the Chinese word for focus, concentration, intention, but also for awareness, for mentally being there. Yisho Dantian, therefore, roughly means something like bring your awareness into your Dantian. Why is this important? Because the mind is the greatest stagnation that we have. Where we use this Yisho Dantian in the first level in order to quiet the qi, now we have not only accomplished quieting the qi, but also we have become proficient in Yisho Dantian. This quality becomes extremely important in the second level. The second level is all about circulating the medicine. One sentence, two statements, namely circulation and medicine. Let's start with the last one, the medicine. What is that? When we quiet the qi, the I is in the dantian. Now there is this ancient saying, the qi follows the I, meaning that the qi goes where the I directs itself. If the I is in the dantian, the qi will go to the dantian as well, and it works a bit like a magnet. The qi will compile itself around the I, so to speak, and it will form a tiny ball which can physically be felt. This is a very dangerous training which can and often does go wrong, even with the greatest of masters. If it goes wrong, then the amassment of qi will physically grow into a cancer. Now don't you worry, the chance that you will ever reach this level is very, very slim. The same goes for me. We practice not enough, not in years and not in hours per day. We will never reach even this second level. When the compilation of qi around the I goes right, then, like I said, it will form this tiny energy ball. The compression of this very tiny ball, as small as the tip of the pinky finger, generates heat, so it will feel like you have a hot coal inside your abdomen. This is what is called the medicine. It is this medicine that you will have to circulate, and the only two meridians that are strong enough to contain its force are the dumai, being the fire meridian by nature, and the renmai, being the counterpart of the fire meridian. This circulation, and this circulation only, is the heavenly orbit. So if you read a book or you go to the average qigong school where they talk about let's practice the heavenly orbit, don't do it. What they practice will make them and you sick, as it is not a true heavenly orbit. Well, so here we are discussing the heavenly orbit, where we should have been talking about the fourth qigong. And that is exactly what we are doing. The fourth qigong is all about the small heavenly orbit, the orbit where qi ascends through the dumai at the back and descends through the renmai at the front. Or is it? The point is that there are many levels, many layers that we practice at the same time. In a moment, we will discuss the physical level, for instance. But where qi is concerned, there are different physical levels as well. Yes, we can talk about qi through the dumai and the renmai, but as I explained before, we have no access to that yet. What we do have access to, however, is a general qi rising through the entire back and a general yin descending through the entire front of our body. Remember the talk on the third exercise where we discussed the separation of skin and flesh and freeing the empty space between. So if we talk about the fourth exercise, then we cannot but talk about the first, the second, and the third exercise. The first exercise teaches us to rise the yang in general, but it teaches us how to confine this general flow into a more narrow pathway, namely the dumai. The second exercise, same thing, but now we learn on a higher level to confine the general descending yin into the renmai. And this is how the renmai can be an ascending meridian facilitating a descending yin qi. It works as a supporting beam carrying a roof. Just as the general yang qi at the back is being carried by the dumai. So here we are, implementing the lesson that the third qigong taught us, severing the space between flesh and skin. This is because now the actual circulation of the renmai and the dumai is not in the renmai and the dumai at all. It is in the levels slightly above them, between skin and flesh. Only once you have acquired the medicine, the hot coal in your abdomen, only then you can circulate through the renmai and the dumai, simply because they are the pathways of the least resistance, and direction at that level is a non-issue. So in short, this fourth exercise is all about the practice of the small heavenly orbit. Not, or at least not yet, actually through the Renmai and Dumai, but by means of a general yang rising through the entire back and a general yin descending through the entire front of the body. One thing is very important to understand. Qigong does not teach you Neidan, and with this fourth Qigong you cannot practice the heavenly orbit. What it does is, it teaches you how this orbit works, and it helps you with the general rising and descending circulation. That is all, but it is already a lot. Well, this is the basic theory of the fourth Qigong. So now we are going to tick off the points that we tick off with every Qigong, and that starts with the physical one. I'll have to get up, boy, and put my chair aside. Okay, done. So, of course, the physical part. This starts with how does the movement go? You know. Yes, so you have a wide position. The position you can see best on the second camera. So maybe you'll have to see. You do not have to sit really low. That's not important. You do, however, have to sit on your legs. Do not stand. You know the difference. We've talked about that yesterday and other times. So sit on your kangaroo tail. Soften the back, soften the neck, open up the head. Sink in the dantian. That's your basic position. The feet are parallel, maybe even slightly pointing towards one another. And for those who entered the series later, this has to do with placement of the dantian. For instance, if you stand too wide, the feet are not actually the issue, it's the upper legs. Yes, if you stand too wide, then the attention, and with that, the dantian will sink really low, which is not good because there the qi disperses and so on. If you put the feet parallel, then the intention and the attention will rise a little bit. And if you put the feet way towards one another like this, then the dantian is actually in its proper place. But you can find a middle way by placing the feet in a parallel position and feeling how they, and the legs with them, have some sort of roundness, like you are sitting on a skippy ball, a large ball, or a yoga ball nowadays, and you're sitting slightly at the front. So you're already having this roundness at the front. So that's about the position. Why is this? This is the position for all 4 exercises. Starting with the 5th, it changes. We'll get to that next week. But 1 to 4 sit in this position. And it all has to do with what we actually talked about in the 3rd Qigong. Do you remember the picture I drew, and where you have this, the hip bones, and then the dantian as a ball in that bowl, and it's the dantian that rotates and the body that is connected to the dantian. So instead of having the dantian, remember the 3rd Qigong, instead of having the dantian connected to the hip bones so that this rotates with the abdominal rotation, you want the hip joint, the hip bones fixed and connected to the legs. You sit in the legs, and then this ball that you feel rolls inside without the hip bones moving with that abdominal ball, with the dantian. And now I say dantian, please remember that when we talk about a dantian, we mean something totally different than when higher level Neidan specialists talk about the dantian. Yes, that medicine, that hot cold sensation, that is the actual dantian. And we have to work with something way more earthly like that. Just relax the abdomen and then you feel how a ball is in your center. Anyway, 1 to 4 is about the small heavenly orbit. Yes, I've talked about this. The 4, I have to switch that off. The fourth exercise is about the heavenly orbit, but it's about the smaller heavenly orbit, meaning that the limbs do not take part in it. Of course, the limbs move, or anyway, the arms. But we have to turn back for that to what I explained with the first qigong exercise, the story of the old water pump, where you have to heave the handle to get the water up, and then it flows out, of course. And if you remember, then I have talked about how this has 3 levels. When there's no water flowing yet, you have to really work hard on the handle. But then at a given time, the water will flow and it will flow fluently. So you only have to keep pace with the water, because no effort, but you do have to move, otherwise it will fall still. But you are really, really connected to the flow of the water. So like I said, it does not require any strength or any power. And then there is the higher level, the 3rd level, where there is so much water coming out of the ground that the handle, it moves all by itself. So there you go. Well, that as well is a level that, well, I'm not going to say that we are not going to reach it, because we can. This level is workable for us, but then we have to really work hard on it. Anyway, these 3 levels of the old water pump, that means that the handle has nothing to do with the water. It only sets it into motion. And this is the case with the 4th qigong as well. Yes, we move the arms, but that's only to facilitate the flow, the current of the water. And what you feel in the arms is actually both totally irrelevant, because you're working on this circulation, and on the other hand, it is relevant because it is part of the qi pump. Water pump, qi pump. So first, the movement in its most physical level, and then for that we have to return to the essential exercises, where we just talk about things like shoulder disc and so on. The movement of the 4th qigong, you sit on your legs, the hands never part, except at the end, of course, but they stay at the same distance and they go up really close through the body. Now, yesterday I've talked about the abdominal line. The elbow does never go behind the elbow, behind the abdominal line. And here you get this weird thing that it does, but if you are very careful, then somebody watching you will say, wow, wow, your elbow goes behind the abdominal line. But you yourself, you're not aware of it. It feels like it's still in front. That's what you're looking for. The hands rise close to the body. And the palms stay up as long as possible until they all by themselves rotate. Then you take over the rotation, you push up, you go slightly forward. Please notice the distance I'm making. And then on that distance, there you go out, sideways, and you envelop a large ball, this distance. Then, like if you roll that ball with your hands, the bottom, and then you start all over again. Shoulder disc, there. The shoulder disc confirms to the rule that if the torso rotates the upper arm rotates. That's a very, very important rule in internal exercise. And it is quite safe to say that if you hear somebody claiming how internal he is, but you see his arms just hanging like that with the shoulders locked and so on, then, well, LSD, mushrooms, whatever, but it's not internal. So back to our body as a framework. The shoulder disc, when the torso rotates, the upper arm rotates. We have looked into that. And the rotation of the upper part of the torso with the chest can be like this. Yes, forward, backward. That's a rotation as well. So when you stand here, actually, I'm slightly, well, and I'm really exaggerating because you're not supposed to see it, but I'm slightly rotating the chest backward, and that's how my upper arm can rotate backward, and that is how my hands go towards the body. Now I have to move forward again and backward. I continue backward, there, and then I go forward. This is only lower arms. And now there is, again, upper arm and chest rotation alike. And so again, I have to, well, erect myself like this, meaning that the chest, the upper chest rotates like that. So the upper arm can rotate like this. And that is how I pull my hands towards the body. Then I continue. And before the back actually gets into my awareness that I actually feel the back curve backward, before that moment, I go the other way. And that is where, again, the upper arm rotates. I move up. This is only lower arms. The upper arms do not move, they do not rotate until the lower arms are pulled down by gravity. Actually, I'm a bit too late then, but then I give in to gravity, so the upper arms rotate, the chest has to rotate. There. This goes precisely together, of course, with the flow of qi, where, has hopefully become clear in the previous exercises, it is impossible for our body to be open at all places at the same time. For instance, our curved back, it's very, very much impossible for our back to relax here and here at the same time. Nevertheless, I say, sit on the legs, soften the back, soften the neck, open up the head. But this is a series of actions that you perform continuously. So the sitting on the leg, it draws your E down. Then you soften the back, then you soften the neck, then you open the head, then you sink into the dantian, then you sink the legs, then you soften the back, you soften the neck, you open the head, you sink into the dantian and sit on the legs. And like I said, in the fourth qigong, the legs are not part of the exercise. So we want to generate this idea of circulation. General yang rising through the back, general yin going down at the front. So if we only use that shoulder disc rotation, watch the back, I exaggerate again. So when the qi is down there, then here I erect the back, so I facilitate the rising of qi up to that point. But now I lock between the shoulder blades. So I have to go forward slightly, then the qi can continue there. The hands, we'll talk about it in a moment, but they help the qi through the neck, the back of the head, over the head. And then the arms split, and there is a slight rotation, making it possible for the qi to sink at the front of the body. First, the upper chest, And now the soft part where I lean slightly on it and push through Qi into the Dantian. Qi being the access point to the Dantian. Here is my my navel. So let's say, well, put two fingers, something like this. Put this joint in your navel, and then if you put your hand flat over your lower abdomen with that joint in your navel, then there, at this point, there will be Qi under your navel. Is that important? No, it's just 5 minutes of talking. So anyway, but this is the physical part, and that's actually the only thing that there's to say about it, because this exercise is not that complicated. It's just going up, going down, and going back, going forward, right? Combining these two. What is there more to say? Yes, well, there is a very important thing, and because now we are talking about Qi. I don't have to explain the orbit story anymore. I've talked extensively about that just a few minutes ago. But what I do have to talk about is the usage of an image. In Chinese medicine, an image is often used, and sometimes it's referred to as a microsystem. And well, what is an image? Where you project the entire body, well, somewhere else. For instance, in the ear, and then you have ear acupuncture. So there is a leg in the and the backbone and things like that. Foot reflex zone therapy, same thing, where there is a backbone and the organs and so on, all in the foot. There is hand acupuncture, very popular in Korea, where the hand is an image for the entire body. And there are more modern images as well that work very well in acupuncture. For instance, abdominal acupuncture, where the entire body is projected on the abdomen. There is a skull acupuncture, where the entire body is projected on the skull. So if you have, oh, my ankle hurts, then they prick a needle above your ear or something like that. So it's quite a normal thing to work with, and nobody knows why it works. Let's put that first. Even I, the great storyteller, even I have no idea why it works. There are no ancient scriptures explaining this, only that it works. Why it works, nobody knows. There are attempts to explain this, but well, the more complicated the story gets, the bigger the lie. So I'm not even going to try it. But we work with an image nonetheless. Now I cannot help the Qi up with my hands at the back because I only can get this far. Maybe you can get further, but I can only get this far. So what you do is you project your body, your energetic body, from here to there. And here with the hands, you guide the Qi through the back, through the neck, the back of the head, over the head, and then you arrive more or less at this point of your head. And that is where you split. Now we will practice this in a moment, just a few times, for the feeling, because when you split, you can feel two things at the same time. Because you split, the center line becomes more vivid in your awareness. The second thing is that you can feel how, well, a blanket of whatever you want to compare the sensation with, static or warmth or something like that, how a blanket goes down all the way through the entire body and the inside of the arm. Because there are physical details very, very important in this fourth qigong that you easily overlook. I know I have for many years. So first, the details. We have encountered these in the previous exercises as well, so I'm not going to elaborate too widely upon them, but watch the arm. First of all, the shape of the hands. You know that by now? The sword fingers are more or less together. The position of the palm is in such a manner that the center line of the arm exits in the center of the palm, more or less. This part of the hand you should slightly feel. So it actually feels, in the old texts, they talk about like if you grab a ball with your hand. And it does feel a bit like that. Try to grab a football with one hand, and then it feels more or less like this. One more thing, the index finger is slightly higher than the other fingers. First of all, because of you want to be aware of this. Second, because it's a thing in itself. It will draw qi. So that is the shape of the hands. Now, if you move that up and you go out, then many things come together. A linear field, the spiral sensation that we've talked about, and the field sensation. Linear is just feeling, oh, I feel the qi going to my hands. That is why you need the hand shape. Yeah? That's actually the system of the Chung-Mai, the center meridian with its side tracks through the arms. And you constantly want to keep that open, so mind the shoulder. You do not want to break that connection. Keep it rounded. And it's, you see, it's from the elbows up there, and actually the upper arms hardly move at all. There. So constantly keeping that open, that's the linear trajectory. There is a field that you are working with in two ways. First, let's return to the field experience. Like yesterday, you sit on your legs, you feel that roundness. Now we're not going to work with the ball as well. Just start with searching for the field. Slightly keep your hands in shape. Slightly press, very slowly press outward until you feel like if you press against a field around you. Then connect to the field with the outside of your legs, of your upper legs, with the sacrum, the soft part of the back of the head, and that's where you have that field. Now, if you move through the fourth qigong, that connection has to always be there, even if, watch my arms, even if they move in, I feel it less, but I still feel it. I do not lose it. I do not want to lose it. And I scrape, as it were, on the inside of that field around me. And I have to constantly feel it over the entire yang side of the body, outside of the legs, the back, outside of the arms. Constantly there. So it goes up. Here, of course, I do not really feel it with my lower arms, but I feel it, I do feel it with my back. Here, the arms, the outside of the arms reconnects to the field sensation. I do not push it out like this, but I scrape on the inside along the field. And I can continue to do so until I'm here. And now I go underneath the body and I'm at the back again. So it's a bit like I'm standing in an egg and I'm scraping the inside of the egg. There. The fourth qigong. Constantly feel that field around you. So the back side of the head, outside of the arms, top of the head, still the outside of the arms, and you continue to scrape on the inside of that field. Good. Now I said I'm not going to talk about the ball, but now I am. Well, not really, but I have to talk about the yin side, because what we've talked about, the field experience, is the yang side, it's the outside of the body. Now we will combine things for the yin side, combine things such as the hand shape, the openness of the arms, and later on, I haven't talked about this yet, but the spiral that we need to make. But the inside, let me rephrase. So when you rise, you feel the field or the back, the outside of the upper arms, the upper back, the back of the head, the outside of the lower arms as well, outside of the hands. Now gravity wants to pull my arm down. I'm very relaxed in the elbow. I'm not, well, I'm making the movement now to show you, but actually I'm not making the movement. The arm just falls out. And it is not allowed to fall down according to the wish of gravity. It is supposed, the weight of the arm is supposed to feel going downward through my body. That means that I have to, well, it feels a bit like collapsing, but it's not collapsing, it's not weak. You're surrounding gravity with activity. And if you can do that, then we can talk about the yin side. So again, you rise, the yang side of the body. The entire back. That also tells something about the placement of your shoulder blades. Well, I can't show you that, or I have to go naked. That will cost you. But you have to manipulate the shoulder blades a bit so that you're not aware of them. Here I go past the neck, the back of the head, over the head. Now gravity starts. And before it can pull me down in that manner, I collapse in that manner, but watch my arm. I slightly, when I open, I slightly rotate so that I feel this location of my hand. And by manipulating my arm, I have two things. I catch two birds with one stone. The one is that gravity goes through my arm. The second one is that I get a physical sensation layer here. Then on the inside of the arm, for some reason on the upper arm, the inside, you will never get a sensation how long you may practice, but continue the flow idea, and then you will reach this point. And then by using the hands going down, you can press the chi in between skin and flesh. You can press it down and gather it in front of the dantian. Then with the hands, use the hands. You massage underneath. Remember the image. So this is underneath your body. And by using the muscles from your genitals, from your perineum, from your anus, very, very lightly, and don't linger there. Yeah, but just use the muscle, pam, 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 one behind the other. And that's the combination of these two pushes the chi underneath the body to the back. And then again, you can make it rise through the back. Remember the shoulder blades. The neck is very difficult. You skip it. So you go to the back of the head, over the head. In the meantime, you're still feeling the field continuously. There. skip to the inside of the arms. There. And push the qi down with the palms of your hands at the front of the body and gather it into the dantian. Watch how the hands go towards one another, but like if they envelop a large ball and they push against that ball, but that's not possible. So when they cannot push it in, they glide off. There. And now you have all these things combined, the physical level with the shoulder disc rotation, the field sensation, the rising of the yang through the back, there, and the inside of the arms, the front of the lower head and the throat, the front of the chest, the abdomen. There. So you make a full circulation. Yes, you will feel the arms, but they are not part of the circulation. Again, I cannot say that enough. One thing I haven't talked about yet is the spiral. In order to study the spiral, let's look at the exercise of the Fei Jia Gu, where you sit wide. It opens up one side, you spiral out. The spiraling continues, but it backfires to the dantian, and then from the dantian you open up, goes out, you spiral out towards the palm. You continue the same direction, but the spiral fires back towards the dantian, and so on. Of course, the exercise does more, but for now, focus on the spiral. Out, there, and return. There is one thing we can learn from this physical spiral, qi spiral as well. Going out is not that difficult. Yeah? The only thing is you have to move a bit extra, but only with the extended parts. Remember, it is a spiral, not a broken up rotation. If I move like this and like that, that's a broken rotation. I rotate this part of my arm, then that part, that's it. But a spiral is like a spring. It continues. So I start the spiral with my dantian. Dantian being part of the torso. So the torso rotates. And now I slightly wait with the rotation of the upper arm. Not too much, just a little bit. Then I rotate the upper arm, but the torso stops. I can only rotate that upper arm that far because it will irritate. Then I start a rotation here, just beyond the elbow, which I can do only a few millimeters. Then I rotate at the wrist, where I wear my watch. And then I slightly press out the palm, and you know about the hand shape. Now I can do two things. I can release the tension there. So from there, I release there, then I release here. That means that the weight drops, rotating my upper arm, and then I have to rotate my dantian. That's actually this is not a bounce back of the spiral. This is an open full spiral. If you practice this a few times, well, let's do that. You will feel the arm getting warm immediately. So, of course, always open the shoulder. Rotate the dantian. Slightly later, rotate the upper arm. Then beyond the elbow, wrist, before the wrist, and then open the palm. Slightly press out. Then relax the palm. Relax the wrist. Relax the elbow. Feel in your shoulder how the weight of your lower arm you can become aware of. And once you're aware of it, connect to that rotation with your dantian. So the dantian rotates out. Bend the upper arm. Beyond the elbow, before the wrist. Palm out. Relax the palm. Relax the wrist. You relax the beyond the elbow. Feel the weight pulling on your shoulder and give into it by rotating your dantian. Rotate your dantian out. Shoulder disc. Beyond the elbow, before the wrist. Palm out. Let go of the palm. Relax the wrist. Let go of beyond the elbow. Feel the weight at your shoulder and immediately give in with your dantian. There. That's an open spiral. There's also a closed spiral. It starts the same. Yes. So, open position, the dantian rotates out, then the upper arm, beyond the elbow, the wrist, the palm. But now we continue the same direction of rotation. So, we give more pressure to the palm. And you will feel that on the wrist, beyond the elbow. Give in, give in. Change the direction of the dantian. So the torso rotates, so the upper arm rotates. Beyond the elbow, the wrist, the palm. More palm, more wrist, beyond the elbow, shoulder, dantian. So we have two spirals. The first one was that you release there. You spiral out there, and you spiral back. You can invent exercises as you like with this. There, don't make me do all the work. There, and relax. And you have the continuous spiral where you go out, beyond the elbow, then the wrist, then the palm, then more wrist, bounces back towards the elbow, the shoulder, and to the dantian. That last type of spiral is very, very important. Why? Because, well, the outgoing movement is just an outgoing movement, and it always spirals if you have an open system. Now, like I said, there are these two types of spiral, and the second type is the type that bounces back to the dantian. It is being used by the third qigong as well, where you have the entire spiral, two arms and the head connected. And here the spiral starts over the body. It winds over the body on the outside of the arms to the hands. That's where it stays. And now you get the back spiral. So it starts there. And you feel your movement in the shape of the spiral. And now you're here. And once you're here, you have returned to the dantian. I know this is difficult, this is complicated, but you get there in the end, as long as you understand what you're looking for. What does this have to do with the fourth qigong? Again, a bit of theory. if you want to circulate yang over the body and yin at the front, then there has to be something to circulate. Where does the qi from the back and the front come from? Well, there are many systems working at the same time. So you could say, well, it radiates out from the qi in your body. Yes, that's true. But there's also another thing. As you might recall, your training with me started with opening up the qigong in this position. The qigong being the central meridian is the only meridian that can communicate with the dantian. That's one thing. And it has this peculiar thing that when it's over full, then before it fills the dantian, then it fills the dantian because it can communicate with that. And when the dantian is full on the level of the qigong, so not on the nadan level yet, but on the level of the nadan, when the dantian is over full, then it will overflow two sides, like a bucket, yeah, only at the bottom. And it will overflow at the back and fill the back with yang qi, and it will overflow at the front, filling the front with yin qi, and then you have something to circulate. So the dantian, filling the dantian is very, very important. And what you get in this fourth exercise. Now, yes, the field has to be there constantly, the field awareness. Yes, the yang and the yin differentiation has to be there constantly. But now, the handle of the pump, the arms. That means that here, when moving up, I actually circulate. And now, because this releases all by itself, meaning that it reverses the spiral. While the movement goes up, the sensation goes down, and it like a thump on the dantian. There you spiral out, albeit very slight. And now you start again, you know, with the hands. But actually that's as slight as it is, but it is a spiral back towards the dantian. Second time. So there are two pushes on the dantian. There. Sink in the dantian. Out again. Sink in the towards the dantian. That's about the spiraling part of the fourth qigong. One thing that we have to talk about in the fourth qigong, and which was less important in the previous exercises, is the breathing technique. We have already encountered in the second qigong how breathing techniques are combined. So there is the average, the normal abdominal breathing. Breathe in, the abdomen swells. And by closing the muscle circles, if you like, the air falls out, breathe out. That's the normal abdominal breathing. Then there is the second type of technique. It's a bit more difficult and it's quite active and invigorating. The reversed abdominal breathing, where you slightly tense up like you are a Michelin doll, consisting of rings. The genitals being one ring, then above that is a muscle ring, and above that, and above that. And you tighten the ring, and then that ring, and then that ring, and that's breathing in. So you actually get a thin abdomen while breathing in. And then you get a hard ball there, and you breathe out by relaxing downward. And the abdomen swells. Make sure that the downward movement, as soon as it's in the soft part and behind the navel, goes outward and not downward, never downward. Yes, so by, difficult to show, but by tensing up these muscle rings, if you like, I breathe in, but it feels like that. And I breathe out through the body towards the dantian, and it swells up again. In, the abdomen gets in, out. Well, this is a bit abstract for a video class because I can't make you feel what I'm doing. But remember abdominal breathing and reversed abdominal breathing. That's what we work with. In the second qigong, we already have encountered how you breathe in with the normal abdominal breathing, but when you breathe out, you use the breathing out again towards the dantian of the reversed abdominal breathing. It's a nasty trick. So breathing in expands the abdomen. Remember here as well, you switch to the inside of the arms, the front of the body, push down the chi, guide down the chi. But breathe out with reversed abdominal breathing and the abdomen swells even more. To the outside, never downward. I can't say that enough. Now back to the fourth qigong, because this is way more complicated. And to make a short story a long one, which is my special talent, how did I get to this? Well, my teacher taught the qigong, this fourth qigong, as I teach it to you. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Now his nephew, a master in his own right, taught the very same qigong. Breathe in, breathe out. And he said that that was the original way, while my teacher said that his manner, the 4-part breathing, was the original way. So who's talking the truth? Well, this took, well, not so little. This took many years before I found out what was going on. Actually, the nephew was the lazy one. Lazy in the sense of making concessions in order to please his students. I found this thanks to a student of mine who came to me and talked about the 5th qigong, you remember, with the long breathing in, the long breathing out on the other side. And he said that his students had problems with that, so he had changed it just in breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Well, if people have a statement to me, then I never comment on it. So, okay. But it did make me think, why am I breathing in so long? So thank you to that student. And back to this 4th exercise, because it extended to all exercises, the same question. Why is it so, is it stated the breathing has to be like that? And every statement is a question. And eventually I found it. Back to the 2 breathing techniques. What this 4th qigong does is it combines the abdominal breathing with reversed abdominal breathing in a very, very specific and difficult manner. First of all, you have to make sure that you are aware of your breath. Even though there is Isho Dantian, let's say the normal abdominal breathing, you have to be able to follow the sensation of breath, something going down into the abdomen. And by closing the abdomen from the bottom up, how a sensation goes up and out. I know that can't be air. You do not want any air in the abdomen. A sensation. So once you can feel that, then you might want to practice the reversed abdominal breathing. And when you're at a point where it's not distracting anymore, you can feel it way stronger. It really becomes an actual wave. And this sensation of direction of what happens on the inside, that is how you combine the two breathing techniques. When I breathe in with the normal abdominal breathing, the direction of sensation is going down. Abdomen swells. When I breathe out, the sensation goes up and out. With reversed abdominal breathing, when I breathe in, even though the breathing goes like that, but the sensation goes like that. And when I breathe out and relax internally, the sensation gradually goes down into the abdomen, exactly the other way around. And that's of course why it's called reversed abdominal breathing. The combination. I'll stand like this. So when I breathe in, I'm using reversed abdominal breathing. So I use the muscles and I get thin from the bottom up. I can't do this and talk at the same time. So I breathe in. Now I breathe out with normal abdominal breathing, the prolongation of that direction. Then I breathe in with normal breathing, normal abdominal breathing as well. And I breathe out again, down as well, with reversed abdominal breathing. So the top part uses normal abdominal breathing, the bottom part uses reversed abdominal breathing. And then the direction, the sensation direction of sensation. How do you say this? I have no idea. But the direction follows exactly the path that the qi should follow. And then you have connected physical movement, qi movement, and movement of breath. Going up, you know, reverse abdominal breathing, still at the bottom part, normal abdominal breathing, breathing there, still normal breathing, now in, and out, reversed abdominal breathing again at the front. This is really, really exhausting in the beginning when you practice this, but this is what builds qi when you combine with the field sensation, with the spiral sensation, especially the bounce back, which is really important, like I explained, to pump up the dantian. So you can make a song of that. Oh no, it exists already. Anyway, that's what this is doing. Now there's one more thing we have to talk about where the field training is concerned. You might remember the previous exercise that we've done a few times ago. I don't remember when, but it was a continuation actually of the field training, and it extended into gourd training. Gourd, the fruit, you know, like a melon but H-shaped, like that. So to remind you of that, you sit on your legs, feel how you have a ball in between the legs. You feel it with the inside of your knee muscles. And the arms are open but hanging down. So instead of being totally filled, the top is empty. So you're a balloon half full. The bottom is full. Now, if you compress, I exaggerate with my legs like this. If you compress that ball, actually it shouldn't be visible, but I have to show. Then the contents of that part have to remain somewhere. So they are being pushed up through the body and in between the arms. So now the top is full, the bottom is empty. Then, by moving my hands from the fingertips to palm base, to wrist, to elbow, that's how I empty the top towards the center of the body. Then by using these praying hands and feeling, one hand feels the other very strong. By using that sensation, I guide the qi down through my body, through the center part, And then it fills up the ball in between my legs. Again, this sounds very wrong, but I can't help it. So compress, rise, fill, empty, compress, push and guide, fill, compress, rise, fill, compress, guide, and fill, compress, rise, fill, compress, guide, and expand. The gourd. While you practice the gourd, you can of course practice it separately, just like I did now. But in fact, you want to continue to feel the field as well, where you could say that the gourd partly is the ball on the inside, but separated in an upper, a lower part, and a connection in between. And then there's always the field on the outside, which has to remain there, but same, now I feel it's stronger because I'm pushing, I'm against the field, and it's not only that I am pushing and emptying the ball on top, but it's the field pushing my arms towards one another as well. There. And now when I feel that ball between my legs, I'm pushing against the field, which is like an elastic balloon, so it pushes me back there. And then the contents have to stay somewhere. They rise through the center. The inner part, the ball, fills up and makes me push against the field, which again pushes me back against the ball, and so on and so on. This gourd is a very important sensation to use as well. If you look at the Tai Chi movement, then you will see it there as well. But it's one of the two movements, the other one being the field, expanding, compressing, expanding, compressing. And in qigong, it's the same. They have to be there both at the same time, but for practice purposes, you can amplify one of these aspects. So you can take the spiral or the gourd or the field or whichever one draws your attention. But like an onion, every layer has to be there. So you have to adjust the sensation of one and slighten it a bit, because otherwise you won't be able to feel the other one as well, and so on. Now there is one thing in Qigong 1 to 4 that I have already mentioned. The legs are not part of the exercise. You are sitting on them, fixating your dantian, fixating your upper body. So how does the gourd work? Again, this is where the reversed abdominal breathing comes into play. You sit in your position, and now actually the bottom ball of that gourd is not between the legs, but it's here. Not too low, just where, this is where my navel is, and just there. Not lower. Don't sink down so that you feel the anus being pushed out or something like that. Very, very bad. So what you get is that you contract the muscle rings, and this does start with the genitals. So the rising part starts low. The sinking part ends high. Yes? So by tensing up very slightly the genitals and the anus, you get a compression, then the muscle ring above that. And that's actually the same as using that when you use the legs, but now you've placed it a bit higher. So, well, I can't show you this, but that's where you go. Then you rise through the center line and you open up in this shape. And now instead of narrowing it down to guide, you have to feel. And again, this is a very, very hard to find sensation, but it's there when you move really precise, physically and mentally as well. So that means that, what I mean is that when you fill this up, you also feel moving like a hood over your head to the front. And when you very slowly move, allow the arms to fold sideways, what happens here? Two things. The main attraction will be a general sinking down of warmth or static or whatever. I don't know how you want to describe it. Going down over your face, because actually this part still is rising of yang qi until you reach the palate in the mouth. And then when you reach the tongue, which touches the palate, then you revert to yin and go down. But another thing, when you spread the hands, is that that sensation focuses on the center line as well. And you have to adjust how far you move out and how sideways you move out, because you will lose it really, really easy. But it is possible to feel a center line going down. And that's the emptying of the upper ball, while you follow this line as well. So what you get is that when you feel this going down, it has a certain speed. At the same time, you have this sensation going here and reaching the upper chest, and they have to be there at the same time. There, now the top ball is empty. I sink down through the center, I fill the abdomen. Remember reversed abdominal breathing. Then I breathe in, reverse abdominal breathing. So I empty the bottom ball, push up the chi through the center line. I breathe out with normal abdominal breathing. That direction continues. I empty the top ball. I guide the chi down through the center. And I breathe out with the reversed abdominal breathing. Good. Well, that's a lot of information, I can imagine. The main thing to remember is actually two things. Like I said, I'm very good in making a short discussion a really, really long one, and which I have done today. Quod erat demonstrandum. But two things to remember. The fourth qigong is all about the small heavenly orbit, meaning the yang qi at the back going up to the top of the mouth, and the yin qi going down, underneath, connecting, and so on. Small heavenly orbit. The limbs, the arms do not take part. They are helpful, but they do not take part in the circulation. Second, in theory, and in a really, really high level, this circulation goes through the Dumai meridian and the Renmai meridian. Whether we will achieve that level, yes or no, takes a lot of practice. But this qigong does prepare for it. Well, what can I say more? Nothing. No, this was it actually about the fourth qigong exercise. So, well, I hope you enjoyed, and that you haven't fallen asleep yet. And like I said, next Friday there will be a class, no talking, just practice, because I've talked enough this week. And then, of course, the fourth qigong will pass by as well. Well, we have quite an array of exercises, so I'll fill the time with sleep. And well, that leaves me at thanking you for being here, thanking you for your attention and your interest, and wishing you the best. Stay safe, stay healthy.